October 4th, 2023. The Rays, after being shut out in Game 1, dropped Game 2 of the American League wildcard 7-1, getting crushed in embarrassing fashion at home against the Texas Rangers. It's their 7th postseason loss in a row, and over the past 4 games, they've only scored 2 runs. Not even the local population bothered to show up, as they could only muster about 20,000 people per game. Not even a sellout. If this was any other team, it would be the signs of a failing franchise, one that's destined to go nowhere, and perhaps one that has no future. But that would be missing the bigger picture, as if the past 25 years have taught us anything, it's that the Tampa Bay Rays are the most interesting team in baseball. The path from initial offer to expansion was quite a long one for the people of St. Petersburg. Talk of bringing a team to Tampa Bay first sprung up in 1966 with Jack Lake, publisher of the St. Petersburg Times, claiming the area was suitable for Major League Baseball. As Florida's population grew, the case for a local team grew with it. In 1976, the Bay Area was graced with the Buccaneers of the NFL, the region's first professional sports team, and the hunger for more grew. In 1983, local businessmen in the area formed the Tampa Bay Baseball Group, led by Frank Morsani, and they would spend the decade on the hunt for struggling teams to lure them to Tampa. Their first target was the Minnesota Twins, who had recently moved to their new stadium, the Metrodome. Despite having low attendance, it was not enough to prompt a move. Next, they would target the Oakland A's, who also had some stadium troubles. However, they were able to use the threat of relocation to convince the city to renovate the Oakland Coliseum. Other teams, such as the Texas Rangers and the Seattle Mariners, contemplated the move, but ultimately chose to stay. At around the same time, Rick Dodge of St. Pete had spent his fair share of time trying to talk to owners about expansion. Hoping to attract more attention, him and the city of St. Petersburg greenlit construction on a stadium, despite Commissioner Peter Uberoth advising against it. Over 20,000 fans had donated to the cause, as the project broke ground in 1986, a risky gamble to be sure, as the city had to give up a lot for it to be built, and the people in the area, notably black people, were forced out of their homes.
St. Petersburg really needs a stadium, and needs a team. Glad to see it happen.
The site soon became a hotspot for owners and executives, as they now had a tangible reason to move to Florida. In 1988, Dodge had a chance to lure the Chicago White Sox to St. Pete, after they had failed to receive funding for a new stadium of their own. They almost succeeded, had it not been for an intervention by Governor Big Jim Thompson at the 11th hour, who forced the state legislature to continue until a deal was made. Despite failing multiple times to lure a team, and not being guaranteed expansion anytime soon, construction on the ballpark was completed in 1990. And it was dubbed the Florida Suncoast Dome. And Morsani would eventually compromise and help work to bring a team to St. Pete. The building would host a variety of sporting events in the early 90s, including the Tampa Bay Lightning, earning the nickname the Thunderdome, as it waited for baseball to arrive. Emboldened by the new stadium, the people of St. Petersburg pushed harder than ever, as the MLB was planning expansion in 1991. After failing to purchase the Kansas City Royals, the group pushed heavily for an expansion team. They might have succeeded had it not been for a second group led by Stephen Porter, who also wanted to represent the Tampa Bay area. Somehow, MLB would choose the Porter group to go forward, leading to Morsani being rejected and ultimately dropping out. The Porter group would, of course, falter, and MLB would give a team to Miami instead, which only further enraged the people of Tampa Bay. This would lead to their biggest push yet, where they would look to purchase the fledgling Giants in 1992. They were led by local businessman Vince Naimoli, who was no stranger to crafting successful businesses and fighting for what he wanted. The Giants, who were also looking for a new stadium, had requested a hefty cost for a new ballpark to replace Candlestick Park. The city refused, however, and Naimoli saw this as his opportunity to cash in. He offered to buy the Giants for $115 million and in turn move them to St. Petersburg. For the people of Tampa Bay, the wait for baseball seemed to be over, as their shining new ballpark was itching for a team to play in. However, council leaders of San Francisco would launch a last-ditch effort to keep the Giants. They would put up a $100 million bid to keep the team, which was admirable, but still less than Naimoli's offer. But once again, their efforts were thwarted at the last moment, this time by Bill White, president of the National League. Through his influence and additional funding, the city would accept the lower bid and stay in San Francisco, as they financed a new stadium, which would eventually become AT&T Park. Furious, Naimoli would sue the MLB for interfering in the deal, and Congressman Connie Mack and Bill Young would investigate the league's antitrust policies. It was quickly becoming a messy situation for the MLB, as they faced big trouble if that information were to spread. Thus, finally, in March of 1995, as pressure grew from local communities, especially from the people that had their houses destroyed for an empty ballpark, the league officially granted an expansion team to the Tampa Bay area, as well as Arizona. With the team finally coming, the people of Tampa Bay had reason to celebrate. Jack Critchfield, a corporate leader at the time, had voiced his support and worked with St. Pete Mayor Bob Ulrich to bring the team home. And he and his wife would buy season tickets behind home plate, where they continue to sit to this day. As for the name, Naimoli went with one that would reference the aquatic culture of the region, although a lot of people, namely Christians, definitely didn't like the inclusion of the devil. Well, sucks to suck, because that name would eventually stick, as the Tampa Bay Devil Rays were born. Naimoli would bring on Chuck Lamar as the first GM of the new team, a man who had relatively little experience at the job. Lamar would immediately begin to stock the farm with young players, hoping to contend somewhere later down the line. In November of 1997, Larry Rothschild was brought on to be the team's first manager, who, again, had no managerial experience beforehand. In the expansion draft, the Rays' selections were lackluster at best. Their first pick, Tony Saunders, would put up mediocre numbers, giving up 111 walks in 1998, still a franchise record today. There was also Bobby Abreu, a man who had put up good numbers for the Astros. It was seen as a good pick for the Rays until they shipped him off to Philly hours later for Kevin Stalker. Stalker would perform okay with the Rays, though he only stayed for 2 years, while Abreu would do that. But hey, it wasn't all bad, as Quinton McCracken would have a good year for the Rays in 1998, hitting .292 with 59 RBIs. Although these trades would result in shipping off bigger talent in Andy Sheets, Brian Boehringer, and a pick that would become Dimitri Young. Among other things, the Rays would bring in journeyman Wade Boggs, who, now at age 40, was nowhere near his former self. As the start of the season drew near, this new Devil Rays team was looking mediocre at best. Nonetheless, Namoli insisted that the team should not lose less than 100 games. As opening day came closer, fans became even more excited, selling out tickets in 17 minutes. 45,000 fans packed into Tropicana Field for opening night against the Detroit Tigers, a mark that still stands as the attendance record to this day. Wilson Alvarez would start the game, throwing the first pitch in Devil Rays history.
And the first pitch in Devil Ray history, down and in, ball one, and that will go directly to the Hall of Fame.
With lots of young talent, hopeful promise in the future, and a passionate fan base behind them, it looked like the Devil Rays were finally ready to compete in Major League Baseball. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm not going to beat around the bush. The Devil Rays absolutely sucked. From 1998 to 2007, they finished with the most losses out of any team in baseball. Represented here is their record of that year. If it's going down, it's not a good sign. The latest they ever had a winning record was July 4th, 2004. And even then, they didn't even come close to the playoffs. From 1998 to 2007, they were the worst team in the whole league. Not that the people of the Bay Area cared, they were just happy to finally have a team. With average attendance of about 30,000 people per game in '98. After losing on opening day, the Devil Rays earned their first win the next day, which then led to them jumping out to a 10-6 start. Yeah, it didn't last long. They finished 63-99, dead last in the AL. But hey, they didn't lose 100 games, and they still finished better than the Marlins. Rookie pitcher Ronaldo Arroyo threw 32 games that year, finishing with a 3.58 ERA, which was somehow the best on the team, which is kind of sad. Still, it was enough to earn the team's first All-Star selection and finish second in Rookie of the Year behind some guy named Ben Grieve. A truly depressing sight is Fred McGriff leading the team in homers with 19. Yeah, 19. Fortunately, the next year he hit a few more, and he ended up becoming one of the better hitters of this time, leading the team in 1999. In the offseason, the Devil Rays signed yet another old veteran, Jose Canseco, who ended up hitting a bunch of homers and earning an All-Star nomination, before missing the latter half of the season due to injury. Also in that year, something very special would happen to a legendary player. Wade Boggs entered the 1999 season with 2,922 hits, and he looked poised to finally cross the 3,000 hit mark. The weeks went on as he inched closer to that milestone, and on August 7th, he was 3 hits away. In the third, Boggs knocked a grounder to right field, scoring Dave Martinez. The next inning, he hit another RBI, and now sat 1 away. When he came back up in the 6th, the crowd was anxious, and on a 2-2 count,
And there's a drive, deep right field, it is gone! The hit that makes history is a 2-run home run. 3,000 base hits for Wade Boggs, and he hits a home run to do it.
in typical Devil Rays fashion, they lost that game. And a few weeks later, Boggs would play his last game, also a loss. After that season, he would retire. And while his time in Boston earned him his Hall of Fame plaque, his number 12 still hangs in the Trop as the Rays' first retired number. And where that home run ball landed, a golden seat now sits. Small wins like this were about the only thing fans had at the time, as just a couple months before this, they had to watch Tony Saunders suffer one of the worst pitching injuries ever. Yeah, he wouldn't come back after that. They had another heartfelt story with Jim Morse, a former top prospect whose MLB dreams were derailed by injuries. In an open tryout, scouts were impressed with his skills, and he quickly made his way through the minor leagues. On September 18th, he would make his MLB debut, and while he only appeared in 5 games, it was still a nice story. Maybe they should make a movie about that. It's the new millennium, and ownership is looking to make a big splash with more veteran hitters. Greg Vaughn and Vinny Castilla, along with McGriff and Canseco, would form the Hit Show, the force that would propel the Devil Rays to success. Well, that did not end up happening, as the team once again plummeted to the bottom of the standings. The pitching in particular killed them, and when the offense eventually went cold, everything fell apart. The charm of a new baseball team was beginning to wear off, and due to this, attendance was also beginning to decline, as the fandom was itching for results. Instead, the Devil Rays would be sellers at the deadline, selling away multiple different players for young prospects. The Hit Show didn't even last a full season, as Canseco was dealt to the Yankees in August. By the end of the month, the lowly Devil Rays were already looking to the winter, when Boston came into town. Gerald Williams came up to bat against future Hall of Famer Pedro Martinez when the Rays once again got embarrassed that night, getting shut out in a Martinez complete game masterclass, along with 8 players getting ejected. But the seeds had been sown for a rivalry that would continue into the 2000s. New uniforms and colors wouldn't save the Rays from the basement, as they finished with back-to-back 69-win seasons in 1999 and 2000. And partway through the 2001 season, manager Larry Rothschild was axed after just a 4-10 start in favor of Hal McRae, a man who also didn't exactly last very long. Just a year and a half later, he was gone, after the Rays' first 100-loss season in 2001. Vinny Castilla was also let go, but not before hitting the longest home run in franchise history. The deadline once again saw the team selling, with McGriff surprisingly being traded to Chicago. Not the last time the team would trade a fan favorite. Mark Teixeira wouldn't even sign with the team if he was drafted, so they went with Duan Brazelton instead. Yeah, no one wanted to play in St. Pete. Hey, expansion teams have it rough these days. I mean, I can't imagine Arizona is doing much better. Oh, what, they just won the World Series? Hey, remember Ben Grieve? He's on the team now. Never mind that he's regressed super hard. We're back, baby! Well, at least the Rays have the draft to look forward to. 2000 saw the Rays select Rocco Baldelli and James Shields. And they got this Aubrey Huff guy in the 5th round. What a great guy he is. So, surely the future is bright, right? Guys, oh my god, the Rays have done it! They've taken the league by storm! They are the 2002 World Series champions! Wait, that's just out of the park baseball. In reality, 2002 saw the worst season in franchise history, with a miserable 55-106 campaign that saw yet another manager get shown the door. That season also included a brutal 15-game losing streak. But hey, they were in first place for 5 days. 5 goddamn days. For the 5th year in a row, St. Pete residents had to watch a god-awful baseball team take the field, while their expansion brothers were relishing in championship glory. It didn't take long for attendance to start going down. People's patience were beginning to run out. However, 2002 did mark the beginning of one man's career, and the emergence of the first seeds of success. Carl Crawford, while he wouldn't make his impact until a couple years from now, did make his debut this year, along with Aubrey Huff and Randy Wynn, and the offense was finally able to show some signs of life. Over the next 5 years, Crawford would be the first piece of the new Rays that would show some sort of promise, as his 2004 season saw him land an All-Star nomination, and he even received some MVP votes in 2006. Mostly thanks to their incompetence, the Rays were able to select B.J. Upton in that year's draft, and with the emergence of Baldelli and newcomer Ray Ordonez, meant the Rays actually had some hope. March 31st, 2003. Pedro Martinez is once again dominating the Rays, throwing another complete game. And heading into the ninth, down 4-1, Boston once again looks to dispose of their lowly division rival. However, as Alan Embry takes the mound, he immediately begins to struggle, giving up a single and then an absolute meatball to pinch hitter Terry Shumpert, which he got all of. All of a sudden, it was a one-run game, and Embry was taken out after giving up another hit in exchange for Chad Fox. He was able to put down the next two hitters before giving up a walk to set up first and second with 2 outs. And at the plate is none other than...
Second. In the air to right. Nixon is headed back. Looking up. That ball is gone. A 3-run home run for Carl Crawford. The Devil Rays have come all the way back and they win it.
It was a small but meaningful victory, as while the Rays were still terrible in 03, they still had some bright spots. It started with a new manager, as McRae was replaced by an unlikely candidate. Lou Piniella, the manager of the Mariners, was a Tampa native and seemed a great fit for the team, but, of course, he was under contract, so the Rays went to the negotiation table. The cost seemed great, giving up all-star Randy Wynn, but the team was hopeful that Piniella could turn them around. Baldelli, in his rookie season, racked up 79 RBIs in a 2.9 WAR campaign, and Huff would hit 34 homers. Man, good thing Huff is playing good ball right now and not doing stupid shit online. That would never ever happen. Ordonez, who went down in May with a career-ending injury, was replaced by Julio Lugo, another man who's done absolutely nothing wrong. He did end up fitting in well with the offense, and the core of the team was beginning to form. Still, they would have to wait for any meaningful results, as 03 was another forgettable year, a 5-21 June being the ultimate low point. But hey, we did get to have Piniella dye his hair blonde, a result of a bet for the team to win 3 games in a row, which didn't even happen until early July. Yikes. Pitching remained a huge sore spot on the roster, especially with the offense beginning to take form. The 03 pitching staff was the second worst in baseball, only ahead of the abysmal Tigers. And if Jermini Gonzalez was able to be the best starter with an ERA of 3.91 and a WAR of 1.7, then, yeah, things are not great. If the team was going to get anywhere, they needed some good pitching. But they only brought in young prospects like Mark Hendrickson and Doug Wechter, who would have an alright career with the team, and now is on their commentating crew. It's 2004, and the Rays are in Tokyo? Yeah, the Devil Rays and the Yankees opened the 04 season in the Tokyo Dome. And the opening game was a sign of promise, as new signing Tino Martinez and Jose Cruz Jr. led the offense to a big win. Yeah, again, it didn't really last that long, as they immediately plummeted right after. And in early June, they sat at 21-34. For fuck's sake, can this team do anything? Like, no matter what they do, they're still completely awful. We're never going to see a good team in Tampa Bay. Okay, they won the Giants series and swept the Rockies, including this walk-off inside the park homer. And also the Padres. And the Diamondbacks. Hang on a second. On June 22nd, the Rays would defeat the Jays to win their 12th straight game. And yeah, they lost the next day. But then they responded by putting up 19 on Toronto's ass. The Devil Rays are 500? I mean, sure, they're in third place and quite a ways out of the wild card, but anything is possible. They would hover around that mark until just after the All-Star break, going an unprecedented 27-10 stretch, until a 6-game losing streak hit the wind out of them. Despite that, it's still the best spot the team's been in years. This is a weird feeling. The Devil Rays are merely just okay instead of absolute garbage. Yeah, the universe needs to be corrected. Well, the baseball gods responded to that 12-game winning streak by having the wheels fall off in late August with a 12-game losing streak that all but killed the season. They still finished 70-91, their best record yet. And they weren't in last place for once. Suck it, Jays. Despite missing the playoffs once again, there was hope in St. Pete. The team finally began to show some signs of life, and the deadline saw new pitchers Jose Diaz and Scott Kazmir join a pitching roster that was now not complete garbage, just underwhelming. The starting rotation still reeked, but at least they weren't at the bottom of the league anymore. Crawford had a breakout year, putting up 5.1 WAR, and once again leading the league in stolen bases. Huff continued to mash the ball, and Lugo, Baldelli, and Cruz Jr. all put up respectable numbers. If this team could just get some pitching, maybe they might actually get somewhere. It's year 8 of the Devil Rays experience, and Namoli's ownership has made very little progress. Sure, he's the guy who brought the team here in the first place, and he deserves all the credit for it. But as an owner, he wasn't very good. His stable of signing veteran players to try and bring fans in, his unwillingness to raise the team's budget despite complaints from Piniella, and his general stubbornness has made his tenure with the team a frustrating one. He wouldn't allow outside food, and forced a policy that restricted people from moving down to better seats, and even himself sat in the stands watching fans, and if they had outside food, the person responsible for letting them in would be fired on the spot. One time, an elderly lady tried to get in with some cashews, claiming they were for her diet, and as the security refused to let her in, a lot of arguing ensued, as the angry family turned and left. By 2001, fans were openly booing him, and by 2005, his tenure with the Rays was well overdue. The team just never seemed able to get over the hump of being competitive. Like, oh wow, you brought in Denny Bautista, Alex Gonzalez, and Travis Lee. Whoop-de-fucking-do. And who's this bum? Kevin Cash? God, what a fucking nobody. I mean, spoiler alert, he sucked as a Ray and was gone almost instantly. 13 whole games, that's all he played. Good riddance. Alex Sanchez, a former top prospect, was also brought in, and subsequently became the first player to be suspended for PEDs. The offense continued to put up impressive numbers, and the pitching continued to be horrible as usual. regressing right back to being the worst in baseball. After what seemed to be a promising turn in the right direction, the Devil Rays went right back to sucking, going 8-16 in April en route to a 67-95 season. Even when it seems like they finally figured it out, they can't hold it together. At this rate, it'll be 50 years before they even make the playoffs. In the draft, the Rays made the incredibly wise decision of selecting Wade Townsend over Andrew McCutchen. And while he would go on to gain 5 All-Star selections and an MVP, Townsend didn't even get out of the minors. The Devil Rays were stuck with an all-right offense, a shit pitching staff, and an incompetent front office. Something had to change. Back in May 2004, a New York businessman who had hoped to purchase the Mets was blocked and was instead suggested the lowly Devil Rays. And after 2005, he became the new principal owner of the team. His name was Stuart Sternberg. Much later on in this series, he will become very infamous, but for now, he's the guy who finally got Namoli out and brought in real change. Chuck Lamar, the team's GM, and the guy who was also pretty much irrelevant during this whole time, was also fired. Piniella was also sent packing after the team bought out the last year of his contract, which meant the search for a new manager was once again underway. In their places, Andrew Friedman and Gary Hunsaker became the new GMs, and Matt Silverman took over as team president. For their manager, the Rays looked west and found their man in Joe Maddon, a move that would end up changing the course of the team drastically. 2006 saw more of the same, with the emergence of some exciting talent to at least bring some hope. Johnny Gomes, who had put up solid numbers the year before, lit up the league in April, hitting 11 homers, before ultimately fizzling out and ending the year with injury. B.J. Upton started getting some serious playtime as well, which at least provided some comfort while the rest of the lineup regressed. Kazmir was quickly becoming the team's ace, while everyone else continued to be leagues behind. But they too had some hope in the form of another promising prospect, James Shields. Aubrey Huff, now declining hard, was sent to Houston in exchange for Mitch Talbot and Ben Zobrist. Lugo was dealt to the Dodgers, continuing the long-standing tradition of the Rays being unable to afford their big players. Alex Cobb and Desmond Jennings were selected in that year's draft, along with someone else we'll get to very soon. But hey, you know what this year did bring us? The introduction of the Ray Tank, baby! Go and be entertained by the cow-nosed Rays rather than the shitty baseball team. As the 06 season came to a close, they seemed to be getting a good idea of their future core. Crawford, Baldelli, Upton, and prospect Delman Young were expected to lead the way, with Kazmir and Shields being the aces on the pitching staff. They'd have to start producing soon, though, as interest was continuing to decline, and the Rays were still the butt of jokes all across the MLB. They needed to figure it out soon. Meet Carlos Pena. Signed as a free agent from Boston, he immediately put up numbers, putting together arguably the best offensive season for the team up to that point, with 121 RBIs, 46 homers, and 7.2 WAR, cementing him in the new core. Alongside him, Upton was proving himself to be more formidable, and Aki Iwamura and Brendan Harris put together an offense that was actually quite good in 07. It came at a cost, as Elijah Dukes, a former top prospect, would struggle with off-the-field issues, and he would remain stuck in Durham. Kazmir would have another great year, leading the league in strikeouts, and Shields continued to be solid. Despite this, and man, this is getting old, the pitching staff still ranked among the worst in baseball. God damn it, man. Things just seemed like they were never going to change. They had great pieces in the offense, with Pena, Upton, Baldelli, and others, and two great pitchers in Shields and Kazmir. Hell, even the bullpen was finally getting some love, with Grant Balfour and Dan Wheelers. They had the pieces to compete, but their record showed otherwise, with another dreadful finish. The Delman Young experiment had run its course, and he was traded to Minnesota, along with Brendan Harris and Jason Purdy, for Matt Garza, Jason Bartlett, and Eddie Moreland. Something that would spark an absolutely crazy trade tree that ended up working out pretty well for the Rays. But right now, no matter what they could do, their efforts just seemed futile. Surely, one day, this team has to break out. One day, they'll take the league by storm and earn some respect. It has to happen eventually. They can't be bad forever. One day, they'll earn their glory.